I'm Noah Abrams, and welcome to The Days Between, the show where I talk to my friends, people I admire, and people I want to better understand about success, failure, happiness, and misery, as well as all the other elements that make up a life well lived. Along the way, we'll look at mental, spiritual, and physical health, and when life didn't go as planned, the steps they took to get themselves from A to B and beyond. This week, I'm speaking with Lysa Cooper. Some people are defined by their careers, and some careers are defined by a person. In the world of styling, few have had an imprint as lasting as Lysa's. From hip-hop to rock and roll, and from the stage to the big screen, Lysa Cooper knows everyone, and she's not afraid to tell you. Having left home as a teenager with a work ethic far beyond her years, she navigated the nightlife of 1980s New York City, creating a name for herself as well known as the clubs and restaurants in which she worked. Photographer Ellen Von Unwerth recognized and encouraged Lysa's aesthetic talents early on, setting the stage for a life and career that can only be described as legendary. While the mark she has left on fashion and entertainment is undeniable, it's Lysa's natural ability to cut through the noise and fondness for connection that has allowed her to create a global community of people from every walk of life, which she describes as her true abundance and is seemingly a nod to her Quaker upbringing. As she embraces the latest chapter of her story as a medicinal healer, we discuss the importance of not being attached to one identity of yourself, the changing definition of celebrity, and why she won't take creative direction from people with bad shoes. Please sit back and enjoy the one and only Lysa Cooper on The Days Between. So I'm here in Venice, California with Lysa Cooper, who it is so nice to see. Now, we've known each other, at least a decade.
For sure. Although I've lost all sense of time these days, but definitely over 10 years.
Well, what makes me laugh is we met out here, and I identify you with Venice in my own personal life, but you're one of the few people that I know that is equally at home here as you are in New York City. And you're from New York.
I'm born and bred New Yorker.
New York City?
Native New Yorker. Oh, I was born in the Bronx, to be exact, and then grew up mostly in Long Island and back and forth to the city. Parents got divorced and then remarried each other. You know, all the fun things that people were doing back in the 60s and 70s. I was born in 66, so I spent some time way up in the Bronx and uptown, but I don't really remember it. My first memories are really like Manhattan craziness, visiting, and then Long Island.
Were you an only child?
Oh, no. No. I had a younger brother, Frankie Cooper, 2 years younger than me. And then I have Daniel Cooper, infamous Daniel Cooper, who's 10 years younger than me.
You all grew up in the Bronx?
No. I was only in the Bronx for a few years, maybe a year, 2 years. And then we grew up in Uptown and Long Island. Let me be exact, actually, because I love where I grew up, which is the North Shore. And I say it with that accent on purpose. So I grew up in Glen Cove and Locust Valley, and I went to Friends Academy.
Tell me a story about North Shore.
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot to say about Long Island now, especially in our current political climate. But it's kind of an interesting, beautiful little world that happens between Manhattan, Queens, and coming down into that part of the island. So you have these amazing little towns, Roslyn, Seacliff. It's all like Victorian homes on the water. And you're on the bay side looking at Connecticut. I basically grew up on the beach, believe it or not. I mean, really, I grew up on Long Island Railroad on top of that. Best train in the world.
You grew up Quaker?
I went to a Quaker school most of my life, my school life. And I got to choose my religion, and I chose to be Quaker. I think it was also a discussion between me and my parents because my parents weren't particularly religious, and they only really got into religion when they borrowed a bunch of money from my grandfather, and that was a stipulation. I'll give you the money if you go to church.
What was it about Quaker? What drew you to it at that age?
I think a few things. First of all, I think I had some kind of life relationship around the meeting house itself. I always felt very comfortable in this beautiful, usually shaker-made, wooden place of peace, whether I was at the Friends Academy in Long Island or there's one in Brooklyn, there's one up on 25th Street, and each of these rooms somehow I really connected to. I really like the idea of it being a community worship, not a led worship by whether it be a priest or the reverend or, it was really about the community coming together and sharing. And for some reason, I really connected to it. It's actually my favorite part of school. Not a lot of other people liked it, but we went to meeting, I think, twice a week. And then later on, it became once a week.
Now, did you go to high school in Long Island?
Friends, I went to only one school. And then later, I got not kicked out. I got asked to leave because I was already working by the time I was 12. So.
Working in what capacity?
My first job, I don't even know what you call the title, but I was working with chemicals at a newspaper printing house, which I probably shouldn't have been doing at 12 years old, but I was. I've always worked. I think it's one thing I can thank my parents for is they really instilled an insane work ethic in all three of us. I had a little after-school job, and I loved it. First of all, because I was with adults I didn't know, who were all freaking crazy. I think there's way too many chemicals in there to begin with. And I really liked it because it kind of took me away from my house, and I had a pretty harrowing and horrible relationship with my mother, who, God bless her, was a functioning alcoholic at the time.
So work was
an escape. It was fun. It was interesting. It definitely was a skill teacher. I'd never even seen a computer. At that time, we didn't grow up with computers. So it was this odd sort of moment where I was around the future, basically, in an odd way.
You left home after high school then, or?
Then things got really bad. No, I left way before that. I emancipated myself from my parents when I was 15. I knew that I had to get out of there, and it was getting violent. My mother was a functioning alcoholic, which means most of the time she was blacked out. So she had no memory of, what was happening one day to the next. And I was a very nervous kid. I barely slept. I knew that I had to get me and my brother out of there. It was just time to go. Plus, I was already working. And I already had an idea. I was going to keep going to school. I was going to do this. I was going to get out of there. These people are crazy. I got to go.
And this was at 15 years old?
No, I was probably saying that around 14. But New York State didn't let me I left when I was 14, but you couldn't emancipate yourself legally until you're 15. And you have to go through all kinds of hoops, and most of it around seeing a therapist, going through the social services, all of that.
So at 15, you're fully emancipated.
At 15, I was already working at Danceteria. I was working anywhere I could. It gets a little foggy here because there's a lot of drugs and alcohol. But I then ended up, of all things, I was at this place called the Bat Cave that I was bar backing at. And I met Jenny Lumet. I don't know if it was outside or inside, but a wonderful new friend. And she was like, come live with us. I live with a bunch of dudes in this apartment on Broome Street. Come live here. And from there, just changed everything. I ended up working at Danceteria. I was working in the Bat Cave. Back then, you had 9 different jobs. And then living with her. And I was finally around this whole new group of wonderful people. I think at this point, I was probably 15, 16. And one day she took me to go meet a friend of hers that was working at Details magazine, and I started working there. And I kind of had experience because I had been at the newspaper, and the next thing I know, I was just working for Annie Flanders, one of her many assistants.
At what age were you an assistant at Details?
16. But remember back then, there was no one ever asked me for an ID. No one had any idea. You just walked in and you got a job or you didn't. I think I was at that point already bartending, probably one place. I was starting to work all over. No one ever said, how old are you? Not that it mattered.
But the other assistants, just any idea age-wise?
I'm sure they were really young, but New York was different then. You hung with all different ages, all different cultures. I think back then, Details they were in the Puck building. And I probably had one of the most diverse staff I've ever seen.
What year was this?
85, 84, 85, somewhere in there.
Was this your first exposure to fashion?
Details wasn't a fashion magazine. What Details was then was basically a New York City scene magazine. So the club scene, the music scene, and the art scene all in one the Details all in one magazine. It went fashion when it got bought and became a men's fashion magazine. But before that, it wasn't a fashion magazine.
So early on, you're expanding your network. You're meeting, I would assume, a ton of people.
I think the thing was I had my foot in so many places, but New York was this nucleus of people that all kind of, you could go to Danceteria every night. It'd be a totally different scene, but there was that core group of people. And then, we were all forming our families at that point.
How long did you stay at Details?
I think I left, it's like I probably got another job to another job to another job. When I look back on it now, I don't know how I could never do that because, when did I sleep? Because I was working daytime, nighttime, it didn't matter. I think I ended up giving up Details because it really, at that point, I started working at night. And once you really start doing that, and then, then I discovered Paradise Garage, and then I'd be up for 3 days straight, the day job had to go. So from that point on, I was just working in the nightclubs and bars and restaurants.
And doing what exactly?
Oof. So at Danceteria, I first started going there. And then when I started working there, I was the elevator girl for a little while. Back then, like if like the bar back didn't show up, then you go do this and you go do that. And so Danceteria was like a real family working. And then from there, I heard that there was a new restaurant that was about to open up and I should go down there and get a job. And it was Indochine and it hadn't even opened yet. And the first day I got hired as a coat check. I didn't even know what that was at the time. And I remember this woman came in wearing a real leopard coat. And I was like, hell no, I'm not touching that thing. So I got fired day one. 2 days later, Brian hired me to be a waitress, and I was the worst waitress in the world. And so maybe a year later, I got fired from that, and he's like, "Okay, you're just gonna be my assistant." And the thing is that I have this kind of mind, so I know where everything is. And I became Brian's assistant. And then I could not be replaced, which was really smart. I got fired from Indochine 24 times. So many amazing reasons. I remember once Richard Gere told me to sit down because we knew each other. We were also neighbors. So he told me to sit down for a second. We were chit-chatting and some woman he was dating got really jealous and Brian fired me. And I was like, oh, really? You don't even know where your car keys are. And I left. And his car sat there all night because he didn't know where his car keys were and he had to hire me back. And then I even moved into the building and he kept firing me. I was like, I live here. You can't fire me. Anyway, I think I still hold the record 24 times. There are a few people that are close.
Were you cognizant at the time that you were making as many connections as you were?
No, not at all. I don't think I ever made a connection. I mean, a spiritual connection, yes, but I wasn't. Actually, I wish I had the kind of mind and heart that could have monetized all my connections over the years. But at the same time, my relationships, and I take all of it very seriously, are my abundance. They are my wealth.
You had a hashtag for a while, I know everybody, and it's literally true. And I'm just curious when that started for you. Was it during that period of time?
I don't think I was cognizant of it. I think it was just I was in the nightclub business for a long time. And then I had nightclubs, and this is before there were, what do you call them now? Promoters. This was before there were, party promoters. This is just when you opened a club and you opened the door and that was it. There was nobody promoting. They just showed up. So I think I spent a long time in that world and I made a lot of friends. I'm also super social. I'm a Cancer. And then I had this insane magic, which I don't know how, but I always was able to find the most amazing homes. So I would entertain extensively. And they were always in weird situations, and I don't even know how half of them happened. But then I was also able to be part of, I started to be able to manipulate my scenario a little bit and just, infuse it with fun and vibe. Then when I went into fashion, it wasn't planned. It just happened almost out of necessity. We had a baby coming into the house and somebody had to stop working at night.
So how do you make that transition from nightclub, nightlife into fashion?
Well, again, we're talking 98. So that's where fashion came from. That was what was influencing fashion, was the nightlife and the music and the scenes and hip hop and ba. And it was really, I just met an amazing photographer. When I met her, I didn't even know what she did. And she decided to move to New York and literally explained to me what a stylist was from a French fashion photographer's perspective. So there was nothing like that here. And so between me and another woman, we kind of just winged it. And really it was out of, we got to switch it up a little bit. And then I started working with this woman and it just kind of fell into place. But if you think about it, I've been doing the same thing since the beginning, just making people feel good and look great and really like connect to their inner fabulousness.
What was that woman's name?
Ellen Von Unwerth. It's not that she even explained it to me. It's like it happened so quick. Like first she asked to take my picture for interview. We did it. It was really fun. All the clothes were there. I did it all myself. She's like, wow, you're really good. I mean, we met at a Vivienne Westwood show. So we were already like chummy and friends. It just fell naturally. And at the time I had a nightclub called Juicy. So she would come and shoot there and we did a film together. I should back all this up by saying back then, everybody's hustle was strong and everybody was collaborating, but we just didn't call it that way. That's what you did. You found your crew and you made stuff together and you made places together and you did things together because that's what you do. This kind of individual thing, I think, popped out of our new narcissistic social culture.
So you came in as a stylist at a pretty established level, would you say?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say that there were no other stylists really, and there was nothing to compare it to, not only for me, but for clients, for magazines. It was like this fresh new world that we just created. And I ended up doing celebrity stuff more because I already knew everybody from the nightlife and out and about. And all of those people were also coming into their creative moment, like all my actor friends were starting to work. And then hip hop started to have this much more visual drive behind it. And so between the videos and then it's hard to say now, but I remember then it just seemed like a natural flow. If you look at it now, it seems a little weird, but back then it wasn't. You crisscrossed in those worlds all the time.
Well, see, for me, it doesn't seem weird. What I see now is people saying, oh, well, I'm going to become a stylist and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to get to this place, which to me seems counterintuitive because it is such a relationship business.
Well, I should say that now people that are calling themselves stylists are more doing personal shopping and more doing the celebrity styling, which is not really, I can't say what's happening now. The whole world is changing. But, the stylist was really the creative director, the one who brings in all the elements and then, from hair, makeup, and really like holds the overall visual together, right? And when you're working with clients, at least back then, you were working with people who were from the beginning to the end. You built a relationship together as you worked together. I was with Aerosmith for like 4 years because we just fit and you were able to expand. And had they stayed sober, I would probably still be working with them, to be honest.
You mentioned that hip hop was getting more of a visual representation. Can you tell me some of the artists you were working with?
The one that comes the strongest, because it was one of my first jobs, was Mary J. Blige in the beginning. And I've worked with her a few times since. But I worked a lot with all the dudes too, from the Roots, Most Def, and then pretty much everybody. Now that I'm not everybody, it sounds kind of funny, but back then there wasn't such a wide variety either. And then once I started working more with like Aerosmith and stuff, I didn't have time to work with anybody else. So you would go into contract with them for a while. I was shooting a lot of women with Ellen, but when it came to celebrity stuff, for a long time, I was just doing men. When I started working with Rihanna, it had been a while. I worked with many women. I was with Shakira for a long time. But really, it wasn't until Rihanna and Beyonce that I finally was like really doing way more women.
Well, that's what I think is so interesting looking at your client roster is you seem to be able to work interchangeably. You've now worked with, at this point, the largest artists in the world. And I'm curious how you've seen celebrity change from when you started to where it is now.
It's interesting. I was talking about this the other day. When Instagram first started, remember, no celebrity would get on there because it was somehow like it wasn't quite accepted yet. And here we are, how culture changes so quickly. But I think that And I'm really ready for this whole celebrity obsession to end because I don't really believe that it's true celebritism anymore. I think we're lacking in a sense of achievement. Like, there's also something in the art of the time spent and the concentration and the focus to really perfect your craft. All that's kind of like hit the high road. And I feel that I'm trying to say this without sounding, because it's not that I'm jaded. I'm actually excited to see the new guard, the new story that's being told, the new kind of celebrity, a celebrity that's well-rounded and maybe not every inch of them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because I'll tell you the biggest thing, and I say this all the time, I think I'm like a broken record. The only thing that's cool is a secret. Once it's not a secret anymore, it's not cool. Once your whole life is out and about, it's just not cool. I love J-Lo, but she's just not cool. I know every inch of her body. I know every relationship. I know what it's like. It's great, but it's not that cool anymore. And
there's no mystery.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we need to go back to. Is that real sense of style and cool.
Do you think that it is more about being famous, or it's more about the craft, or do you think the line is just more defined now?
I think it's more about being famous, but I think it's more about this deep desire by everybody to be seen, and that this being seen is acceptance and love, and it makes you important, which, by the way, I don't know if that would necessarily be the case. So in a weird way, I think and I think we also have a very misconstrued viewpoint of what is famous, what is celebrity, what makes you famous, why are people even that interested? And I think it's a real poison. I think that reality TV has ruined everything from day one till now, and we are now caught in this paradigm of bullshit. And I sound negative, but I'm also at the same time kind of excited that this is all now starting to crash and burn, and I really hope it does, because it's going to give birth to the new guard, whatever that might be.
Well, let me ask you this. Charles Barkley in the 90s famously said, "I'm not a role model." What responsibility do you think somebody like Kim Kardashian or Cardi B has to their followers, if any?
I think you have to know that the Kardashians, I don't care if it's Kim, all of them, 10 of them, 20 of them, it's a business. And it's a business being run by a very, very smart, manipulating, and successful engine. I think Cardi B could turn into the same thing. What I do like about Cardi is at least she's true to herself in some weird way and open to learn. I think they're both incredibly dangerous images as far as what we're feeding to the next generation of women of color, little girls of color, of any color. We've allowed the normalcy of the augmented body, face, hair, tits, ass, pretty much probably down to the cooch. And that is now the image that we want our young little girls to live by and up to. We're all riding this together, and it's a problem.
How does it change?
The new artists that are coming through, the Billie Eilishes, the new, what's going on in Africa as far as this whole music and art scene being about women being positive and in control. And I'm not slut shaming anybody, but definitely not me, because God forbid, if you could Me Too me in a minute. But it is, we have to give the yin and the yang.
Do you think it's possible for somebody like Cardi B or even the Kardashians to incorporate a social?
Cardi B is already doing that. Cardi B has done that immensely. If we were able to figure out even her relationship with Bernie Sanders, even showing people that even you can learn if you just shut up and listen, it's the biggest message she did this year. I think she's amazing, personally. I think that Kim Kardashian is maybe trying with this whole jail thing. I think it's a little crazy and coming from the wrong end, but okay. But again, I can't be mad at people because they got over. I just have to be mad at us for letting it happen.
Do you think that both those things can simultaneously exist? The Cardi B as Cardi B and also Cardi B as social advocate. Can those two identities exist?
For sure. Annie Sprinkles, Robin Bird. Robin Bird, people don't even understand how important she is, how she basically, probably saved a lot of people and really went up against Time Warner like nobody else. You know who Robin Bird is? late night on TV on public access. And remember, she'd be naked sitting with all the different porn stars talking on TV every night. Robin Bird. And then if we'd be on here for hours if I start telling about the whole battle of New York and TV and what happened when cable came through. And she ended up going to bat for a lot of people for years. She became a social advocate about the takeover of Viacom and everything else. Robin Bird.
You are very honest and refreshingly honest. In a world of celebrity, in my experience, in my own professional life, sometimes that's appreciated, sometimes that's not appreciated. What value do you put on that sort of just direct honesty? Do you think that's your currency?
I think it could be my currency. I think it's been a downfall in certain cases, especially with certain people. I've been told many times I have this reputation of being the angry Black woman, especially by what I put on social media. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And this is even before social media, the angry, educated Black woman, the why are you always so this or so that? And I say that because I have no filter. Maybe I have some neurological something or another, but I've never have. I can't lie. Even if I tried to lie, my face gives me away. And I think for a lot of people, they don't want to deal with the truth, or they don't want to hear it, or they definitely don't want to hear it from me. And it's taken, sometimes it's taken me a little bit to figure out how to be as honest as I possibly can, especially because most of the time in life, you're being paid for it, to be honest. Yet when you do, some people don't want to see themselves. I know that sometimes I don't want to see myself, but at the same time, and I tell everybody, please check me. I need my people and my community to also be supporting me and holding me.
I've heard you talk about the industrialization of fashion, where the shift went from being a creative endeavor to more of a corporate endeavor. Did you find that honesty or that trait in you became a hindrance once it became more corporate?
For sure. It's like I laugh a lot with my girlfriends now. I'm like, God, I wish I was like out and about now, because now being Black, I could actually be like, yo, I'm Black, hire me. But it's been a funny ride, because I feel like with record companies, I'm sure you've come up in this in your career. When things started to change, it was when marketing became more important than the music and the visual itself. And suddenly I wasn't being hired by the artist or the creatives. I was being hired by the marketing team. And then once you start having these conversations about look or aesthetic or visual, I realized I was only talking to somebody that had no idea. I remember quite specifically this woman once telling me this and that'll never work. And I just looked down at her shoes, and she hadn't taken them to the cobbler. She had worn them all the way down. It was a mess. And I was just like, okay, I'm listening to this lady who's going to argue with me about a hemline. I think I brought I definitely brought a crazy collection of images in my brain, as well as, I was well studied in all of the, having actually been in the room. I was part of this community and culture that grew out of music and nightlife and fashion at a very important time, and it became all of our visuals. And so in saying that, it quickly switched with the oncoming of social media. I mean, I think nightclubs and bars went through Giuliani and then bottle service and whatever, and that really changed. And then on the fashion side, everything started to be bought up, and you're dealing with now there's two parts to this. It's also that everybody suddenly thought that styling was really easy and they were all going to become stylists. So I was going up against jobs where my work was being used as the reference, and they were hiring other people who had more this or more that or more like in the beginning of Instagram, they were getting hired because they had followers. I wasn't even on Instagram. So, and I definitely I'm having a really hard time. I just don't connect to the computer. And I can't sell my what online. It's not me. So I think that became quite a thing. And then suddenly, and this is very interesting, stylists were suddenly asked to do this, and this, and it's not even my job. Like, you want me to do your whole creative and hand it to you, and then you're just going to go hire somebody else because now you've got my creative. You don't need, what do you need me for? To go to the store?
Was there a conscious moment where you were just like, okay, either I don't want to do this or I can't do this or I'm just not interested in doing this anymore?
There was a few elements. First, very much around everything now is like, I want to look like I want to look like a stripper / whatever and that's really never been my thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I definitely am probably to blame for people coming out on stage with no pants on, but I've always had this thing about, keeping it still. You're looking up here, not here or here. No matter how gorgeous, sexy, or whatever, we are still connected. And I remember it was for a job, and it was like, so I was like, and I went home and I was just like really bummed out because it could have led. And then it became that social media thing where it's like, I'm competing and there's not enough jobs and everything for every person that thinks they're cute because someone said you have a nice skirt and the next thing they're a stylist. Like, I'm not, I think maybe I was bitter then, but it wasn't bitter like I'm angry. It was actually kind of funny, but I also was smart enough to know that everything is going to change. Nothing ever stays the same anyway. And I think I had a real humbling around it because, I was making a lot of money, I had a great career. There was lots of moving parts to it. And then it just wasn't fulfilling. I wasn't laughing all the time. I used to laugh laugh, like where, you got to sit down. And then I realized I hadn't laughed at work, there's nothing funny about it.
So much of styling, though, is creating a visual identity for a client. How tied were you to the Lysa Cooper, the stylist identity? And was that hard to let go of?
Yeah, definitely tied to not so much a stylist identity. I think also at the same time, I was coming up to 50. And I remember years ago, I'd said, I don't want to be a 50-year-old stylist, first of all, because of my back. But I think things were also just changing in it within me around, and especially around this idea of knowing that I would want to and need to reinvent myself in a weird way, that I knew that there was more, that I wanted to be doing more. And to be honest, I don't even truly know even right now what that is going to turn into. I feel like I've been on this sort of major life awakening. I think one thing I've learned in this whole pandemic thing is stay right here in this moment. This is the moment. So I'm definitely in a way better place around all of this than I was, let's say, 3 years ago. And not just because of our quarantine time, although that did hit a big old refresh button, I think, for a lot of people.
As far as the sitting in the moment, how much of that do you think is a result of your early exposure to the Quaker ideology?
I hadn't actually made that connection, but I think, I really dove deep into yoga and the practice. I'm certified in like 5 different things. I really got into that for a while. And I was always one of these people like, I can't meditate. And then I realized that I do meditate, just in other forms. And then I took that into really getting into breath work and really starting to open that into my overall experience. And I think that has a lot to do. What I was telling you comes from, Eckhart Tolle says it. Everyone, the past is your memory. The future is a fantasy. And the only thing you control is the very moment. And that's where you create. That's where you evolve. That's where you change.
You did a campaign recently for Caddis Eyewear. And in the video piece that they did, you mentioned not being attached to one vision of yourself. And I've always appreciated that ideology and that sentiment. But I think that's also very difficult for people to let go of, whether it be a perceived identity of who they are or what they are. And I'm just wondering if you can expand a little bit on how you were able to transition out of one identity and being comfortable with really the gray area and the in-between.
To tell you the truth, when I first stopped working in nightclubs and started styling, I had a really hard time because everybody knew me from being out at night. And so when sometimes I'd show up, people would be like, what are you doing here? And it's like, well, And I got told this for many years. People just assumed I didn't really need to work because I was out and about all the time and I was doing this and I was doing that. And, but that's also, it's funny. I laugh at that myself because that's the feeling that I gave to people. That's the energy that I gave out, that I was good, I was fine. I was, not in a good way, that I was in my power. And I think it was very surprising for people that I actually did a real job. It took a while. So many times my agent would have to be like, no, this is really what she's doing now. Like, this is serious. It happened for years. And so now transitioning into the next thing, maybe in a weird way, it's also funny because I'm still trying to figure out what that next thing is and what it's going to be. Not really trying to, that's not true. I was taking a lot of time trying to figure it out. And then the thing that's happened in this last year because of the pandemic, I've kind of been like, you know what? Let's let what's coming in come in before we put too much judgment around it. Whatever it is. I don't even know.
Recently, I heard you say that real spiritual work is helping other people. And when you're in your real glory, you are in service to others. Is that where you are right now?
For sure. And I think that is, by the way, for everybody. When you really are giving as well as receiving, but when you really are in that place of giving and gratitude, you're in your power. And the best way to be in that power is to be sharing it with somebody else.
And so what does that look like right now for you?
Well, to be honest, in this last year, it looks like me spending a lot of time helping people, like, and some of them being close and some being strangers, really getting back into their heart and a little more out of this fear and this head space of, I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, whatever it might be. And like showing people that really if you really get back in touch with yourself, you're all you need. For the past few years, I've been working with psychedelics and using them as a tool to guide people, facilitate people into their heart, into a place of love and trust and safety.
When you say psychedelics, can you expand on that a little bit specifically?
Definitely everything I do is all natural, but I have psilocybin and a few other medicines, which I don't want to mention because they're not all legal yet. We're working on it.
From my own experience, I suffer from depression. I have for years. And for the longest time, I struggled dealing with it, trying to find a balance. And the only thing that ever felt like it worked for me were mushrooms. I mean, I tried antidepressants. It didn't work. I couldn't work on them. I didn't like the way they felt. And that's not to take away from anybody else that they do work for. It just, for me, it didn't work.
Right.
But I do remember very specifically the feeling I had the first time I had even taken a tiny little dose of psilocybin.
Have you ever worked on a microdosing protocol?
I did. For about a year and a half, I was microdosing just sort of through my own research and trying to figure out amounts. And, some Mondays overdid it. And I was like, all right, I'm not doing anything in the next 5 or 6 hours. But I'm a huge proponent of psilocybin use.
I mean, you would freak out if you could see half of what's going on just in the microdosing community alone and all the different companies and products. And I mean, it's interesting. I truly have seen firsthand how getting into a very important psilocybin protocol I've watched girlfriends get off their meds, their antidepressants, their diet pills. And then I've been using a great microdosing protocol around menopause, which has been delightful. Because I truly believe that just having that slight connection to earth, plant, mother, just sets you in a much better place.
And I'll say from the outset, I'm 42 years old. I didn't try anything with psychedelics until I was in my 40s, which is somewhat
rare.
Well, it's, and up to that point, the only illicit drug I'd ever done is weed. I've never done cocaine, never done heroin. I've just never had any interest.
I think because they were grouped in with all those other drugs, they will always have that. For a lot of people, they will always have this sort of a negative connotation. But when you are doing things with intention, I don't care what it is. I mean, I guess this is life's rule right here. When you do things with intention, you are coming from a place of respect and love. Is
it safe to call you a healer?
I say that I'm a facilitator. Sometimes I'll say I'm a medicine woman because people are like, facilitator. And I'm like, but I'm not a shaman. It wasn't handed down for me from a lineage of and but I can tell you that I've been known as a mushroom lady since the 80s. It's always been my medicine of choice. And I can also say about myself, and fully in my full spiritual ego, I know how to hold some motherfucking space. I know how to set a room. I know how to protect the space. I know how to make a stranger or my best friend feel safe just by being present and connecting. And I think that is something that we all need to really give, not only to ourselves, but to each other, that sense of safety and community. And so therefore, this kind of work that I've been doing, it's exactly what I've always been doing.
But do you not see the connection to Quaker?
Yes and no. For example, 3 years ago, out of nowhere, I was like, I'm just going to start praying. I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to pray to. And in that 3 months of prayer, so much goodness came my way, just from shifting up the energy, for creating a new practice, for finding a new voice within myself. And now you saying that, yes, of course, it totally makes sense. When I think, I say this all the time, like, I really tapped into the idea of community and togetherness through growing up, having to go to these meetings, not having to go, that being part of the curriculum. I wanted to go. It's actually I loved it. A lot of other students thought it was a waste of time. I loved it. I loved having to sit and be still. It's definitely, I think, going to be something that now that you've said it, I'm gonna go in on that for sure.
You've said that the two most important jobs in the world are being a parent and being a teacher.
I think that's because I don't really give a shit about anybody except kids and dogs. I think if we're actually going to really start shifting and changing our consciousness, we have to have laser focus on our youth. And most importantly, those years between 2 to 7. Where we are forming our new people, where we are opening their hearts, where we are showing them and sharing and celebrating who they are as individuals. And then we'll get in, then I can go into the whole thing that really highest paid people should be our teachers. I mean, really, teachers can barely make it. And you're going to leave your child with them all day. It's kind of embarrassing, actually.
Who have been your biggest teachers?
For me, when I look back on my school, one woman I always think of is this woman named Dr. Zita Von Unwerth. She was my kindergarten teacher. She was this beautiful Black woman, and her husband was so dope. And they were cool. Like, I know they were cool. I could just tell by their whole thing. And my parents became friends with them for a little while. I was a kid, I have no idea what happened, but I also feel that, and I wish I could find her now, but I know that she went on to become even more amazing than when I knew her as my kindergarten teacher. And she was just lovely. And there was, for me also, I think there were 3 Black kids in my school. So she was the hot, sexy Black teacher that I was like, I want to be that lady. And she was so smart. And then she had this voice and she smelled so good. And then I think now one of my biggest teachers is my dog. And before that, it was Sugar Ray. I mean, I'm almost crying over this, but the way that my dog looks at me with that love and that connection and that commitment, no judgment. It's like, every morning, every day, there's a lesson right there.
How do you define success?
There's so many ways. But really, I think defining success is how successful are you to be able to close your eyes and know that you are loved. And it's not just about how many people, but it's like who are those people? That's your success. For me, also, I think success can be marked by, how you sleep at night. Like, you lay your head down. Are you happy? Do you have a roof over your head or not, by choice? Are you well fed, and can you share with others?
Are you successful on your terms?
Oh, yeah. I have an abundance of maniacs and lovely people and family. I mean, it's a really hard time to talk about it now because also, I really am a person to person. I still use a telephone like a telephone. I'm trying to get all my friends to at least let me FaceTime for a minute so we can like have even a couple of minutes of connection, even though that's really hard for me because I gotta go find my glasses. I gotta like get the lighting right. Like I'm not that person. But right now it's important for us to know who our people are and for us to check on our people. Because it's very easy right now to fall into the little hole of what the fuck am I doing here? You just got to get good at being okay with not knowing what the fuck you're doing here. And I feel really good there right now, just in the not knowing for once.
How do you define failure?
That's a little bit harder because I think there's something actually quite bittersweet in failure. I think failure is like that moment when you know you have to start again. Because is it really failure or is it just...
Well, let me expand on that for a second. Can you name either a personal or professional failure that at the time seemed completely overwhelming, but ultimately set you up for success?
Oh, well, to be funny and not so funny, there's so many times that I've started businesses and they failed, and thank God they did because I would have killed the partner or they would have killed me. So, and I look at that like spirit providing, right? So it failed, but did it fail or was it saving me? You know what I mean? And then I think in the personal aspect, I think there was a long time where I failed to listen. And I was so busy doing that I wasn't listening. And maybe in a couple of love relationships, it would have been a little smarter to slow down and listen. But I also am I really love to apologize. So I am still super close with pretty much every romantic relationship I've ever had, except maybe 2. But I also I know it takes commitment and work to be in relationships and friendships. And it's important to put in that work too.
How do you define happiness?
I think for me, happiness is fully being in my power and in my joy. Some people say bliss, but it's like joy. And again, I do definitely define it as an overall sensation, not really so much a state of mind.
Would you say that happiness is a destination or is it a byproduct of action?
I think it would definitely be a byproduct of action. I don't think there's any end to it. So you're always, it's not like you get this pride, like that gold thing at the end of the rainbow. Yeah, definitely a byproduct of the action, of your own action.
And how much of that action is tied to meaning?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't think it always has meaning. I think sometimes it's more, how do I say? I think happiness, I think of it's more of an action. It's like you said, it's in movement. It's already happening. It's not a place you get to. I think you do get to, you get to, again, these are all, in my opinion, like it's all energy. It's like, it's a hard one to explain. I think that, again, it's that thing of when you're able to sit within yourself and in your heart, that is finding that happiness. I think I just talked to myself in a circle. Ask me another question. We'll come back to happiness. That's a hard one.
What would you say to 14-year-old Lysa Cooper?
Number one, I think I would say, don't get stuck in New York till you're 42. And that sounds like a funny thing to say, but it's not that I regret it, but I wish that I had maybe at 25 decided to go move somewhere else. That would be the only thing I would add. Like I wish I was a little more nomadic. And it wasn't that I wouldn't have been, it's just that things were going so well. I didn't move, I didn't leave. I think I would say that, and I would say, the obvious, which is protect your neck. Like, I would probably also given myself the Biggie's 10 Crack Commandments ahead of the song coming out. Oh, another thing I would have done, there's several now that I'm thinking about. Number one, I wish to God that back then I had taken a Polaroid of myself every day in all the outfits I wore. To this day, it would have been genius. I would definitely do that. And then another thing is I wish I had been sly enough to have collected the first piece of every designer because back then that's, I was in relationship with a lot of these people and I held on. I have some stuff that even they don't have. I wish I had been smart enough to have archived from the beginning. That I could kick myself for. That was just plain stupid. but you don't think like that when you're in it.
How would you describe what you do for a living?
This has been such an interesting year. I don't know what I'm going to be doing for a living yet. And you know what? If I had told you that 5 years ago, I would have been in a freaking panic because I was a workaholic freakazoid. 5 years ago, if I had been like, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, it would have been all hell broke loose. Now I'm kind of like, I have no idea, and I'm freaking excited about it. I have this fantasy that one day someone's just going to walk up and be like, you should do this job. And I'm just like what happened with me with Ellen. You should do this. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then it was just amazing. Maybe that will happen again. Or maybe not. Maybe, I know one thing. I've never been one to go back. So whatever I'm doing from this point on is only forward.
Lysa Cooper. Thank you for speaking with me.
Oh, you're so welcome.
The Days Between is a production of Noah Abrams Studio. Story editing by Andrew Henry. Mixing and mastering by Todd Stapera and Reference Recording. Website design by John Fisher. Theme music is by Evo. The Days Between can be found online at www.thedaysbetweenpodcast.com and on Instagram at The Days Between Podcast. My name is Noah Abrams. Thanks for listening.